Hey, this is Joe Nabhan, County Government GIS Manager. If you all were at our on-site visit here, which was actually, I think, exactly a month ago, a lot of this stuff that we're about to go through will probably look familiar to you. Being that we had our on-site visit so recently, we really haven't moved a whole lot past where we were at that point. But again, our project is Smart Neighborhoods, Macon-Bibb County. And here's just a quick rehash of our project team. On the call today, I believe it's just myself. Getting back to the COVID-19 issues that we're all having, all our team is actually swamped basically with work concerning that, or otherwise everyone is working remotely. Especially, I think Carol Babcock, she works at Navicent. I can't even imagine what she's going through right now. So we have an issue in Macon-Bibb County with digital equity. And the real problem is not so much folks having access to broadband or internet per se, but having it at home. And that's especially important during these times when a lot of people are at home and not able to go out as much. Now, for our project in particular, we want to put access to computers and internet and broadband in public places that folks commonly congregate at and are close by the areas that need it most. And I think there we go. All right. So 1 in 3 Macon-Bibb County households have no access to broadband internet. 1 in 5 households have no access to a computer or smart device. So how do we seek to address that? Well, we want to put a system of smart kiosks across the county, again, in those places that we've defined. And ideally, we want to go and kind of get them into rec centers. That's really what we're looking at. There are already publicly owned buildings. There's power available. By and large, there's already a network connection there, so it'd be easy to leverage that into Wi-Fi, and it adds that element of security, during after hours when these things could potentially be damaged. So far, what are some of the things that we have accomplished thus far? Well, Arthi has done an excellent statistical analysis that we're referring to as our vulnerability index of our community. That kind of shows where these things are probably going to be most needed. We've done some initial survey as to what kind of features that folks would like to see in the kiosks and where they might like to have them. We've researched some technology options. We've held some stakeholder engagement meetings. The next steps would be actual procurement and deployment of some of these kiosks, and then project documentation and kind of some research to show if we made the right choices and where we're placing these. So here we have a slide showing our vulnerability index. And Arthi, would you like to come on and just briefly speak about these?
Sure, Joe. Thank you for that introduction. Hi, everyone. This is Arthi, and I'm the research team lead for this project. So as Joe mentioned, our first task was to really understand. First of all, let me make sure everybody can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. So the first task was, as Joe mentioned, to kind of even map out where the vulnerabilities in the community existed. So we used scientific literature and well-known indicators of vulnerability, particularly socioeconomic vulnerability, to create an index to kind of guide our efforts and kind of triangulate this community vulnerability with other data sets such as community facilities and other areas that, where we can best address these vulnerabilities. We tried two different methods that again are very well established in the literature for correlated data. So we tried principal components analysis and a more additive index using z-scores. Fortunately for us, both methods yielded very similar results. The index was then validated with Macon-Bibb, the IT team, who again know the community very intimately and know exactly where these on the ground truthing or where on the ground realities exist. So we decided to pick the index that was created with the principal components analysis. And again, the slides above visualized as quartiles help us kind of compare the two and see that they're very, very similar. You can move to the next slide, Joe. So there's many definitions of vulnerability. Socioeconomic vulnerability is just one type. So the next step was to look at other demographic groups that might also be vulnerable in terms of, other mechanisms such as social isolation, reduced mobility. So in this, we used an additional example of where communities have a large aging population, or not currently existing or in the near future. So we also overlaid block groups that have greater than 50% of the population with over 50 years of age. So we pick up additional definitions of vulnerability there. So now what we've done is we've created a base layer on which to assess the community currently, but also what that might look like going forward. So as and when we have the potential to expand the kiosk implementation or the kiosk networks, we have a evidence-based base map to kind of guide that process. Next slide. So the next step was also to kind of not just use a census data. So census data is basically secondary data, but we also wanted to understand community perceptions and the community wisdom that was out there in terms of where they thought would be the ideal places for these kiosks and where we might optimize usage. So we created a online survey, which is also geo-enabled, where folks could give us their thoughts on, what types of kiosk characteristics they would like, what types of kiosk models would be preferred, and also where they think these kiosks should go. The nice thing about the geo-enabled form is that they just have to kind of drop a point in terms of where they think it should go, and we automatically get spatially referenced points. So that helps us create additional data in terms of community knowledge. So I think the challenge we're currently having is, and it's a dilemma, because on one hand we're trying to address digital equity, but we're doing an online survey. So we've been struggling with survey responses, in some ways not surprising. And we had some plans of figuring out how to improve that, but the COVID has definitely put a spoke in that plan. So, definitely looking for ways to compensate for that and pick up on those efforts, so we just have a more robust data set that we can work off. So that we're still looking to see how that we can, compensate for that lost time. So we can move on to the next slide. So this is just a preliminary visualization of the survey responses we've received so far, where we're asking folks, where they think the kiosk should go, and we're seeing, certain locations out there. Joe, do those purple points represent the actual kiosk locations or where folks took the survey?
Right. Those are the survey responses, and it's going to be where they recommended a kiosk be.
Yeah.
And what I can say just by looking at it is that for example this cluster right here, this is downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Over this way, this is Mercer. Anything up this way is in more affluent areas of the county.
Mm-hmm.
You can see some of these flyers here. They're in more low risk areas. So definitely what you were saying about not only not getting very many responses, but not getting the responses from folks we were really looking for. And as Arthi mentioned, we did have a plan in place to for example, get into some of the Macon-Bibb County government departments that have large numbers of employees, many of which might live in those areas, and have them take the survey, and also get into the rec centers and have a person at the front desk of the rec centers be taking surveys as folks come in or out. Unfortunately, our rec centers have now been closed, and due to the COVID-19, and by and large, addressing large number of folks in a closed space is pretty much out of the question, at least for the short term.
Yeah. So again, we're hoping that as the summer comes along and things go back to normal, we'll be able to perhaps participate in a more intensive data collection process to make up for lost time and kind of get the data that we need. So.
Right.
Okay.
So moving on. So what are our technology options? Well, on this slide, you can kind of see your standard kiosk and standard features that we're looking for in a kiosk. And I've kind of roughly defined two different types of kiosks. The first one being an all-in-one type system where basically you're ordering one from a company that'll come basically ready to go. And some of these companies will even come and install it and get it booted up and even maintain it remotely. So I would describe that as an all-in-one type system. And some of those advantages are obviously quicker and easier to deploy. An integrated supported operating system. Some companies offer the kiosk at little or no cost because it's covered by advertising revenue. I can say that I've pursued that route thus far, and unfortunately, those companies don't seem to be interested in our areas. What are some of the disadvantages? Well, if they're not paying for them, there's typically a high cost involved with these units. And again, those companies that are operating on an advertising model not only may not, but so far are not interested in our market. So just a few examples of what those kiosks are. The first one there, the Ike Smart City. They're the ones that operate on the advertising model. I know they have them in Denver. They have them in Philadelphia. I believe they're in New York, Austin. All the great places we think of when we think of these kind of things, they're there. Unfortunately, Ike doesn't seem to be interested in coming here. So that's a non-starter. The other one I would point out is the Ready Ref Media Tower. That is one of the ones that are pretty much largely supported and will ship to us kind of ready to go. The downside of that one, expensive. So we're kind of weighing our options there. So next up, the kind of in-house build ones. This is where we have a company. Typically, a lot of the companies that manufacture this gear are based in China. So we would have them manufacture the kiosk, ship it to us, and then we have in-house staff that will actually assemble it, get it up and running, program the operating system, and deploy these units. That's actually the direction that we're shooting for right now. So some of the advantages, lower cost. Also more flexibility to choose what kind of features we wanted it and how we want the UI and the user experience to perform. What are some of the disadvantages? Well, it shifts that burden of doing the programming and software onto staff that's even more limited now due to what's happening. And again, limited support. There's obviously hardware support, but if we're programming these things, we don't have that advantage of being able to call someone up and have them fix it when there's a glitch. And also a longer lead time for the deployment. These units have to be purchased and then shipped overseas, and then we get them here, and then we need to assemble them and get them programmed basically, and then get them installed. So definitely a longer lead time. What are some of the in-house builds that we're looking at? Well, we got two right here. In particular, the IP65 there. I tried to pronounce that at our on-site visit, and I don't think I was too successful though. So I think I just call it the IP65. You can see that it actually looks somewhat similar to the IKE Smart City Kiosk, and I definitely like the features on this one. You'll also notice it seems to be running some kind of Windows 7 operating system there. We're leaning towards Android for our operating system. So we did have our on-site event actually exactly 1 month ago. I think it was very, very successful. It was great seeing everyone here. I think our location visits were awesome. We did go to the Ruth Jackson Recreation Center, which is definitely a likely location for a kiosk, if not one of the initial demonstration kiosks. And you can see a photo there of us out in front of the rec center there. Secondly, we went to the Ocmulgee Mounds National Historic Park. Both these locations are in the dark brown areas that we saw in our vulnerability index map. So they're definitely vulnerable areas, but they also have a lot to offer with a really excellent recreation facility and again, a national historic park just basically right around the corner. And again, these two locations show the importance of having a healthy and vibrant community that participates in the arts and culture. Well, all of those kind of initiatives and you know, there's a motivation to have those kind of things available as information products in our kiosks. The afternoon included roundtable discussions that, and it looks like I have a little typo there, apologize for that, on the importance of data and information systems and smart city initiatives. So where are we heading to next? Well, the conclusion of our analysis and surveys, we need to determine if further analysis is needed. I think Arthi's done an excellent job with the analysis so far. And like she said, they align with our boots on the ground feeling of conditions in our community. Secondly, surveys. We need to assess whether we need a smarter approach for surveys. Is there something additional we can do given the circumstances with the COVID-19? So those are definitely two things that we need to consider next. User interface and user experience development. Our in-house web programmer, Kaifan, he is in charge of that, and that has already begun. Again, I mentioned this will be Android based, and what we can do is we can develop that user interface completely independent of actually having the hardware here, and get it set up on a test computer and start testing that out now. Really, that's kind of our plan. That way, when we finally do get these kiosks, we'll be able to just load it up, hopefully, and get those demonstration units deployed as soon as possible. Hardware procurement. Well, we were all set to get the IP65 and then the coronavirus happened. And as of right now, those shipments are suspended for this foreseeable future. So that's definitely a challenge. That's going to lead even further to those lead time challenges in getting those demonstration kiosks deployed, which of course is the next item. We need to get them deployed. And then finally, document our project conclusion and track those evaluations and of outcomes and ROI. So what will we do with an intern? Well, again, we have the challenge with community outreach, so that's definitely something an intern could assist with, is helping us get out there to our community partners, perhaps assisting at these rec centers, getting to some of these larger departments we have, doing surveys there. And again, additional surveys, that certainly is a goal. We're not operating on enough information when it comes to these surveys, I think, or not really the sources we were hoping for. Assist with UI and UX development. We're definitely interested in an intern that can assist with that and work directly with Kai to get that.
Hey Joe, this is Greg. You cut your audio out for a second. Can you go back and repeat for about 30 seconds of that?
Did I cut out?
I think so. You cut out at least on my side.
Oh, okay. So intern roles. Again, having the intern focused on that community outreach, getting out to these areas that we're hopefully looking to get this feedback from. That it's been a bit challenging to get to them up till now, and especially now. Getting additional surveys, again, focused in those areas where we want those respondents. We have a general idea of where these units need to go, especially with their vulnerability index. We need to hear from the folks that live there and see what they would like. The big one, assist Kai with UI and UX development. Again, the user interface and the user experience. And we see that as being a mutually beneficial task for the intern, where if they haven't already been involved with development like that, or maybe they have a little bit, but not in a production environment, that would definitely benefit the intern and benefit us by kind of leveling the load on our department. And then finally, documenting the evaluation of outcomes, and if we can get demonstration kiosks deployed before the intern leaves, have them go out and see how effective they are at addressing the needs of the communities. So what if? What if we are unable to improve community outreach efforts? Well, that's a distinct possibility with this COVID-19 issue, especially in the near term, and especially if it continues to go on. Really, I'm almost at a loss of what we're going to do about that now, and definitely that needs some, I think, brainstorming on our part to see how we can address that. What if we are unable to procure hardware? I can't order the hardware right now. Those kind of shipments, you just can't get that equipment. I guess they're, especially now, dedicating all their shipping towards other things. So for the near term, I can't get this hardware. Well, what we can do, like I mentioned, is develop the UI and the UX on the side and just continue that development. That can go on regardless of whether we have the hardware or not. As a matter of fact, we could have all that done and then get the hardware, which would actually make the actual physical deployment a bit easier, in my opinion. What if we are unable to secure an intern? We had 3 interns that we interviewed, and 2 of those interns had declined to come to Macon-Bibb. In no small part, the issue is a concern for the COVID-19 situation, and being so far away from their environment that they're used to their Georgia Tech. So what if we can't secure an intern? That's something we need to think about here. You know, on our end, I think we have the staff to proceed, but it kind of really puts a damper on the goals of the project and the Georgia Smart Challenge goals at large. So that's definitely a concern for us. And that's the end of my presentation there.